Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Philippine Startup Week 2021 press conference. I am your host, Eunice Braga, the head of marketing and communications for Kubo Innovation Hub and Idea Space Foundation. Before anything else, I would just like to acknowledge the presence of our guests from the media, from the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Malaya, Manila Bulletin, Manila Standard, Business World, Philippine Star, Business Mirror, Rank Magazine, Gadgets Magazine, Esquire, Trend, Rappler, and ABS-CBN. Thank you for joining us all this afternoon. I hope this will be a fruitful hour or so sharing information from the different organizers of this year's Philippine Startup Week. So before anything else, and to kick things off, I would like to call on the Executive Director of Kubo Innovation Hub and Idea Space Foundation, Katrina Rausachan, to give her opening remarks.
Hello, everyone, and I would like to sincerely welcome all of you to Philippine Startup Week and, of course, today's press conference. Of course, thank you to our friends from the media, and I would also like to acknowledge our speakers for today's conference, Undersecretary Fidel Daba, Undersecretary Sancho Maborang, and Undersecretary Manika Intik, and of course, our very own Butch Mailey from Cuba Innovation Hub. So our theme for this year's Startup Week is Beyond Recovery, Filipino Startups Redefining Opportunity. And today I'm glad to be the sort of rare bringer of good news and to open up this media conference. In the 2021 economy report published by Google, Temasek, and Bain and Company, they actually noted that the Philippines' 2021 GMV is expected to increase by a notable 93% year-on-year surge to reach a total value of about 17 billion US dollars, driven largely by 132% growth in e-commerce. Looking ahead to 2025, it's estimated the overall internet economy of the Philippines alone will likely reach $40 billion in value, growing at around 24%. So I guess we're seeing record-breaking numbers of Filipinos going online and participating in the digital economy. And it's a Pandora's box, I suppose. And 99% said that said behaviors will likely continue after the pandemic. We've also seen this in our startups, of course, which is why we're here. So the first half of 2021 alone has surpassed the deal values in terms of funding of the last 4 years combined. So again, this report estimates the values of deals to be at over 400 billion US dollars. And yeah, we've seen recent success stories in Kumu, Podcast Network Asia, One Export, Quickwire, PayMongo, Yield Guild Games, Cloud Eats, Mad Eats, InvestEd, Plantina, and many, many other startups that are all participating in this year's Startup Week conference. Same goes with the tech companies driven by our larger conglomerates such as PayMaya and Gcash. So I think all of these developments are showing that Filipinos are ready to be digital first and stay digital first. And while all of this is great news, I can also say that on the other hand, the Philippines still actually has the lowest digital consumer penetration, at least in the big five in the region, right? With only 68% of internet users consuming online services, which means there's still a lot of room for growth. And what we're seeing right now, as amazing as it is just the tip of the iceberg. So, the whole movement towards tech, innovation, startups, it's not just theory. We've been talking about this. It's our third startup week now, but we're actually starting to see it materialize. There's a great opportunity for all of this to create significant value in our economy and for our nation. And this makes the work of our local startup ecosystem even more important. So it's really with this backdrop that I believe we have so much to celebrate this year and showcase at the Philippine Startup Week. I again really thank all of you for being here, for helping us spread the word about the amazing things that are going on in our ecosystem. And of course, it's our third Philippine Startup Week and our biggest one yet. So, again, we're expecting up to 15,000 total participants across the entire week. We have hundreds of startups, over 100 startups that you can witnessed in different pitching competitions in the Cuba Top 100, as well as the Venture Pilipinas competition. Again, over 200 speakers representing everything from investors to startup founders to representatives from the major conglomerates and everything in between. Over 100 community events, again, organized by the most diverse set of organizers yet, and under 5 unique tracks, as well as many partners, including yourselves. So co-presenters, sponsors, and official media partners. So again, I hope everyone has a fantastic startup week, and thank you for attending this press conference. With greater investments in funding, education, talent development, connectivity, successful startups turning to sustainable businesses and maybe even unicorns pretty soon, not too far away. Today's press conference aims to highlight the different initiatives happening in the DICT, DOST, DTI, and Kubo, and how our work and the entire startup ecosystem is currently responding to the needs, the evolving needs of Philippine startups. So I would once again like to welcome all of you for joining us today. And with that, I will be handing the floor back over to Eunice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kat. I really appreciate you setting the tone for this morning's event. So before we proceed with the presentations from our organizers, I would just like to give everyone a quick introduction to Philippine Startup Week. Philippine Startup Week is the country's largest startup conference organized by government agencies and actors from the local startup ecosystem. The event brings together startup founders, investors, corporations, the academe, media, and the government in one virtual stage to foster collaboration and innovation. For its third iteration, Philippine Startup Week will feature various main summits and community events organized by accelerators, tech companies, schools, investors, government agencies, and other organizations from across the country, and even around the world, covering a diverse range of topics and sectors and promoting organizations and initiatives across the growing Philippine startup ecosystem. This year's theme, Beyond Recovery, Filipino Startups Redefining Opportunity, aims to bring more Filipinos into the startup space, build collaborations between startups, the academe, and the public and private sectors, and spark conversations about how the local startup ecosystem can power recovery, growth, and new opportunities for individuals, businesses, industries, and communities. So for our first presentation, our first speaker is Yusek Emmanuel Ray Caintic. Mr. Emmanuel Ray Caintic is a multifaceted information technology leader with more than 2 decades of experience in digital transformation, enterprise architecture, and systems implementation in various ventures. This morning, he will be talking to us about the Philippine Startup Challenge, the Philippine Startup website, and the Startup Grant Fund. So again, without further ado, let us all welcome from the Department of Information and Communications Technology, Undersecretary Emmanuel Ray Caintic.
Morning to my fellow public officials, colleagues, friends from the media, and to all the Filipinos watching today. The Department of Information and Communications Technology, as one of the lead agencies in the implementation of the PSTP, shall foster an environment where innovation is given every opportunity to be designed, tested, and turned into actual products. In order to fulfill its role in the PSTP, the DICT shall implement the Philippine Startup Development and Acceleration Program. One of the key initiatives in this program is the conduct of the Philippine Startup Challenge, an annual pitching competition that aims to encourage and inspire the Filipinos to create innovative and relevant ICT products and services that may also be viable business ventures and help solve social problems. This year, we have received a total of 120 entries from the different regions. Following that, we have conducted 15 regional competitions through our regional offices from October 25 to 29 this year. All 16 first place winners automatically advance to the national finals, which will happen this afternoon. To complete the 25 teams who will compete in the national finals, a semi-final round was conducted last November 10, 2021. The 27 teams were the second and third placers in the regional competitions. The top 9 teams were chosen to compete the national finals. This afternoon, a total of 25 teams will pitch their ICT-related startup ideas which are relevant and geared towards solving social problems. We have invited distinguished judges who are experts in the startup community. They will assist in the assessment of each of the 25 startup ideas. The top 5 winners will automatically become beneficiaries of the DICT Startup Grant Fund. As for the Startup Grant Fund, the guidelines for this have already been reviewed by relevant offices in our department. We will be conducting a public consultation to finalize the guidelines, after which a department circular will be released to formally launch this initiative. Another key component of the Digital Startup Development Program is the development of the Philippine Startup Portal. Phase 2 has been completed, and here is a video on the registration process for startups and startup enablers. Please show the video. Host, please show the video.
The Startup Innovations Portal is the primary source of information on statistics, events, programs, and benefits for startups, startup enablers, and related enterprises in the Philippines. Aside from being a primary source of information, the portal also offers a registration or transactional module where startups can create accounts and register to the Philippine Startup Development Program, or PSDP. To create an account in the Startup Innovations Portal, you may go to register.startup.gov.ph. Scroll down to the bottom of the login section and click Sign Up here. You will then be redirected to a page requesting your email address, username, and password. Click Create Account after filling out these fields. For verification, a one-time passcode or OTP will be sent to your registered email address. You should receive the OTP in a few seconds. If you did not receive the OTP, the system will automatically send another one in a few minutes. You may have to consider checking your spam folder if you are not seeing the OTP in your inbox. Click Continue after entering the OTP. After the OTP verification, you can now log into the portal using your registered email address or username and password. Upon your initial login, you will be asked for preliminary personal information. Fill out all fields accordingly and click Save. Congratulations! You now have a portal account. Please wait for the notification informing you with your startup ID and other announcements. You may also click on the My Account button to check your profile. From here, you may edit any information as needed. If you encounter any issues or need any assistance, you may send your concerns to helpdesk@startup.gov.ph. And that's the Startup Innovations Portal. Thank you for listening.
With that, thank you so much. We are excited and we look forward to the upcoming initiatives not only by the DICT, but also by DTI and DOST. Together with our partners, we will build a strong Philippine startup ecosystem and establish a network of innovators and foster a culture of entrepreneurship in ICT.
Thank you, Undersecretary Kaintik. So we will move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Undersecretary Sancho Maborang of the Department of Science and Technology. So Undersecretary Maborang will be talking about the Startup Grant Fund Program, the Hear It Reseed Program, the WH-WISE Program, and the Hear It 2.0 Program. To tell us more about how DOST is supporting startup and ecosystem development initiatives, let's all welcome our next speaker, Yusek Sancho Maborang.
Thank you to the DTI Undersecretary, Dr. Rafaelita Aldaba, the ICT Undersecretary, Emmanuel Recaintic, QBO President, Mr. Butch Mailey, our colleagues from the government, friends from the media, our partners from private sectors, startups and startup enablers, and to everyone who are tuning in to this press conference. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. On behalf of Secretary Fortunato de la Peña and the DOST community, it is my honor and privilege to present to you the DOST Startup Development Program. Next, please. The DOST has several programs that cater to the different stages of technology and product development. From idea to prototype, prototype to product, product to market, and then market to expansion. We provide funding support and assistance, not just to university researchers and innovators, but also to startups, startup enablers, and SMEs. Next, please. With the signing of the Innovative Startup Act and its implementing rules in 2019, the DOST has strengthened its programs for the startup community by establishing new programs. This year, we have launched 2 new programs that will provide direct funding support to startups and 1 new programs for the startup enablers and the regional startup ecosystem on top of our existing programs. Next, please. Last January, we opened our first call for proposals for the Startup Grant Fund Program for innovative startups as a response to the demand for quick and rapid solutions adapting to the new normal. Specifically, this program aims to provide funding support for them to overcome R&D roadblocks by means of prototype improvement, conduct of feasibility studies, development of product specifications, as well as validate user requirements to strengthen their intellectual property by means of protection and development of the appropriate IP strategies. It also aims to help startups establish initial market traction and engage 1 or 2 potential users and or clients for feedback validation to refine their business model based on the user and or client feedback in order to establish acceptable product offerings or service packages with defined pricing and financial metrics. And lastly, to prepare business continuity plans for operations, scale up, service rollout, expansion of IP protection in other countries as continuous marketing programs. Next, please. After 2 cycles of proposal submissions and evaluations, we have received a total of 93 proposals from startup, of which 82 are industry, energy, and emerging technology related, and 11 were health-related innovations. Only 25 startups have passed all the evaluation levels and approved for funding, with a total budget of 84.9 million. 13 startups have already received their funding, while the remaining are still completing the documentary requirements. Next, please. Also, last June, we just launched the Women Helping Women Innovating Social Enterprise Program, which aims to help women social entrepreneurs who want to access technology, early stage funds, and customized gender-friendly services so they can scale and qualify for investment, unlike other programs that are fit only for mature enterprises. The WH-WISE has two program components. First, customized incubation program and the provision of funding support for women-led enterprises. The mission of the program is to assist 10 women-led entrepreneurs yearly, those who are in need of assistance in acquiring technology, R&D, technical assistance, and even mentoring for them to create impact and benefit to more communities. Next, please. For its first call, the WH-WISE program received a total of 30 proposals from women-led social enterprises and startups. And we are happy to share that 9 social enterprises were approved for a total of 30 million funding. Tomorrow afternoon at the WH-WISE Forum, the first cohort of this program will be formally introduced, so I hope you can join us in this event. Next, please. I would also like to highlight that even before the Innovative Startup Act was signed into law, we have already established facilities that will support startups in their product development and commercialization. In partnership with higher education institutions and state universities and colleges, we have provided them funding to set up their technology business incubators and their initial operations, establish incubation programs, and create services for young entrepreneurs. The startups are able to access their office and co-working spaces, mentoring and training programs, marketing assistance and networking, IP strategy and IP protection, and universities' network of alumni and business linkages, among others. Next, please. The DOST TBI network is now a 48-member strong group composed of 32 industry-based TBIs and 16 agriculture and aquaculture-focused TBIs located in different HEIs and SUCs across the country. We have at least one TBI per region, and our goal in the next 3 years is to have one in major provinces of the country. Next, please. Over the years, the TBIs have collectively incubated and supported 851 startups, and 236 or 28% of them have become full-blown companies, created more than 4,000 jobs, raised over 1.3 billion in private investments, and generated 623 million worth of private investment. Additionally, the TBIs themselves have also received a total of 370 million in private investments from their various partners. Our investments for the TBIs since 2018 amounts to a total of 244 million. And we are glad and inspired that our startups have attracted people and organizations to invest in them, as manifested in the investments and the revenue that they have raised and generated. If you look at the numbers, the returns are higher than our investments, and we are so happy with this. Next, please. Recognizing the impact of the TBIs to the startup community, we see the need to establish more technology business incubators. But building a TBI also requires a lot of preparation. So through the higher education institutions, readiness for innovation and technopreneurship, or HERIT program, we will provide universities with a structured preparatory program to guide and equip them to plan, implement, build, and start embracing the emerging startup community in their own university. We will be announcing the call for applications for the next HERIT program soon. Next, please. Aside from the TBIs, the DOST has also put up or set up food innovation centers in the regions. The FICs are established to showcase the facilities and capabilities and ingenuity of Filipino engineers, researchers, and equipment fabricators to demonstrate that local technology works. The DOST spearheaded the design, development, and local fabrication of several food processing equipment like the water retort, vacuum fryer, freeze dryer, and spray dryer, which were rolled out the 18 food innovation centers in the country, with the main FIC at the DOST ITBI located here in Taguig City. The FICs serve as a hub for innovations, research and development, and technical support services for value adding of fresh produce and development of processed foods in the regions. Each FIC provides the opportunity among the local food manufacturers, processors, and marketers to improve or develop products, produce prototypes, and market samples using the 4 locally designed and fabricated food processing equipment. The FICs are also open to startups who need assistance in product packaging of their food products. Next slide, please. Just last month, we have opened our call for proposals for the Regional Startup Enabler for Ecosystem Development, or RESEED program, which aims to strengthen the startup ecosystem in the regions by providing funding support to DOST-shared funded technology business incubators to lead in establishing and formalizing a regional startup ecosystem consortium. The DOST acknowledges the need for other cities and regions in the Philippines to catch up and produce startups that are fundable by investors and the government. While our TBIs are doing great in supporting startups, we believe that by partnering with the other startup enablers in the region, they can do more by establishing a consortium, establishing a regional startup development plan, engaging with more mentors to upskill startups, and partnering with the respective regional development council. Last week, 9 regional startup consortium projects were approved for a total funding of 13.5 million. They will be formally introduced at the TBI Summit tomorrow, along with the members of the consortium and partners. Next, please. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to invite everyone to the 5th TBI Summit this Wednesday, the 3rd day of the Philippine Startup Week at 9 a.m. to 12 noon. You will know more about the programs I just mentioned earlier, as we will be officially launching them. Next, please. The other highlights of the TBI Summit are the 2 panel discussions featuring our distinguished speakers from the different venture institutions and corporations who are supporting startups. They will be joined by no less than our Honorable DOST Secretary, Professor Fortunato T. de la Peña. And I think that's about it. Thank you for this opportunity to share about the DOST programs and initiatives for startups, and see you at our TBI Summit. Magandang umaga pong muli sa ating lahat at mabuhay po kayong lahat.
Thank you so much, Yusek Sancho. So again, as a reminder for our friends in the media, happening actually concurrently with this press conference is the Department of the Department of Information and Communications Technologies Innovation, which is happening from now until 12 noon. So you can actually rewatch that entire summit on Axel Events. Also, as Yusek Sancho mentioned, the 5th National Technology Business Incubator Summit by the DOST is also happening tomorrow, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And then on Thursday, we will have the Slingshot Conference by the Department of Trade and Industry from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And then lastly, on Friday, we will have the Startup Pinay Conference organized by Kubo Innovation Hub. So our next speaker is Yusek Rafaelita Aldaba from the Department of Trade and Industry. She's currently the Undersecretary for Competitiveness and Innovation, and she fulfills a key role in the formulation and implementation of the Inclusive Innovation Industrial Strategy, or I3S, which puts innovation at the heart of the country's new industrial policy. She also leads TTI's initiatives in preparing industries for the 4th Industrial Revolution and advancing the digital transformation of MSMEs and large enterprises. And this morning, she will be talking about the Startup Venture Fund and the Regional Inclusive Innovation Centers. So let us all welcome to this press conference, Yusek Rafaelita Aldaba of the Department of Trade and Industry.
Thank you, Eunice, and good morning, everyone. Well, amid the entry of new technologies arising from the 4th Industrial Revolution, along with the challenges arising from the pandemic, we've seen many Filipino startups that were able to quickly pivot to new activities. And using these new technologies, they provided solutions to help government in addressing pandemic issues. They offered new products and services, took advantage of the emerging opportunities from changing consumer trends and behavior. Indeed, this week-long celebration highlights the achievements of our startups. So this morning, let me share with you our policies and programs to help accelerate Filipino startups as we enter the post-crisis future and pursue digital transformation. Next, please. The Philippine startup ecosystem, as we know, is a young and growing ecosystem. We are facing a lot of challenges, but our vision is clear: to make the Philippine tech startup ecosystem an engine of economic recovery, inclusive growth, and job creation. To realize this, we keep our focus on growing the number of startups in the country, increasing early stage funding, and building quality startups. Next, please. Where are we now? Based on the 2021 Startup Genome Report, Manila's ecosystem is among the top 100 emerging ecosystems in the world. Manila is also top 20 global ecosystem in terms of affordable talent. Next, please. Fintech and e-commerce are among the startup ecosystem's strengths. And amid the pandemic, local fintech startups increased their volume of transactions and raised funding for expansion. And this year, we have seen our first unicorn fintech company, Mint, with a value of over $2 billion. PayMongo secured $12 million. SquidPay, $2 million. NextPay raised $1.6 million in a seed round of funding. The acceleration of digital transformation paved the way for the growth of e-commerce in the country. Our revenue in e-commerce is estimated at over $5 million in 2021. And Great Deals, a Filipino e-commerce company, was able to raise $12 million funding in 2020 and $30 million in Series B funding this year. Next, please. Indeed, the pandemic has sparked a boom in the country's digital economy. Fintech companies like Voyager and Tonic were able to raise $167 million and $17 million respectively. Prosperna raised $55 million, while Kumu raised $73.6 million US dollars. So even during the pandemic, there are notable startups that have been able to raise funding and brighten up our startup ecosystem. Next, please. Based on the startup genome ecosystem lifecycle model, the Philippines is still in the activation phase, given that we still are a relatively young ecosystem, but with a lot of potential talent. Next, please. And to see how we benchmark against other ecosystems within Asia, Manila and Taipei are both in the activation phase. And we are behind Malaysia, which is in early globalization stage, as well as Singapore, which is already in the attraction phase. Next, please. So to move up the next stage, the DTI Startup Development Program is focusing on expanding the number of startups, increasing early stage funding, and improving the quality of our startups. And there were regulatory policy changes implemented in more recent years. The more important ones are the signing of the Ease of Doing Business Act, the One-Person Corporation, Philippine Innovation Act, and the Innovative Startup Act. The Ease of Doing Business Act has streamlined government processes, systems, and procedures. The revised corporation code now allows the incorporation of one-person corporations, which is easier and less complicated in terms of the documentation needed for registration. The Innovative Startup Act and the Philippine Innovation Act provide funding to support innovation and the implementation of startup development programs. Next, please. The next slide provides a summary of the various support measures under the Innovative Startup Act, such as the establishment of a startup business one-stop shop to facilitate registration, creation of a startup venture fund or a matching investment fund, and the startup grant fund. It would also provide various support measures covering activities such as R&D, participation in local and international events, collaboration with local and international enablers, along with financial subsidies, including tax breaks and grants for startups, including startup visas and the establishment of startup ecozones. Next, please. And together with the National Development Company, we would also be implementing a Fund of Funds program through the Startup Venture Fund, together with venture capitalists and other co-investment partners. An initial amount of $5 million US or 250 million pesos has been allocated for this matching investment program. And this is going to be launched, by the way, this Friday. So I hope to see you all there. Next, please. We are also starting to provide incubation and development and entrepreneurship program for startups with minimum viable products. And for startups that are already in the commercial stages, we are providing an acceleration, valuation, and corporate entrepreneurship program. Both programs aim to help startups grow and scale their business operations. We are also going to implement a global acceleration program to immerse and expose Philippine startups to the global ecosystem and enable them to pursue global business development and fundraising. Next, please. We are also in the process of building a National Center for Artificial Intelligence Research. This is going to serve as hub for data scientists and other researchers as they conduct AI R&D, AI trainings, and AI consultancy services. This center aims primarily to support the AI needs of startups, including MSMEs and large enterprises. And I think it would really serve as a great place for AI startups for AI training, entrepreneurship, and mentorship. Next, please. We are also supporting 8 regional inclusive innovation centers in the country located in major cities like Cebu, Davao, and CDO. The goal is to connect startups and spin-offs from universities with government agencies and the business sector and accelerate the commercialization of their products and services. These innovation centers serve as venues for design thinking workshops along with the networking and engagement with the academe and industry. We work closely together with our partners, DOST and DICT, in order to harmonize and align our startup policies and programs. Next, please. So to conclude, startups have emerged as key drivers of economic recovery, inclusive and sustainable growth, and job creation. We also view startups as catalysts for disruptive innovation. And as we enter the post-crisis future, we are focusing on the following efforts to accelerate the growth of Filipino tech startup ecosystem. First, growing the number of startups through a larger and more coordinated ecosystem and promotion of technology entrepreneurship. Second, increasing early stage funding by attracting more private angels and angel investors in the Philippines, and the implementation of a fund of funds program to support early stage financing. And lastly, building our startup quality by strengthening founder know-how, deepening market reach, increasing talent quality, and expanding global connectedness by engaging with foreign partners. Thank you very much. Back to you, Eunice.
Thank you, Yusek Aldaba. So our final presenter for this morning is Mr. Rene Butch-Maley from Ideaspace Foundation and Kubo Innovation Hub. So as earlier mentioned, Butch is the president of both Kubo and Ideaspace. Ideaspace is a technology accelerator for startup companies, while Kubo is a public-private partnership launched to support startup and ecosystem development. Butch is also a member of the board of the Philippine Council for NGO Certification, a body that approves the applications of institutions for tax-free status. Butch is also the president of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, a private sector disaster management organization that includes many of the major business groups in the country. PDRF currently operates the world's only national private sector emergency operations center. So to tell us more about the Philippine Startup Week 2021, Kubo's ecosystem and startup initiatives, and Startup Pinay, let's all welcome our final presenter, Mr. Rene Butch-Maley.
Thanks, Eunice, and greetings to all the previous speakers. So far, we've had, well, we're going to have 100 community events, more than 200 speakers, over 100 startups, and we've had 11,000 signups in the first day alone for Philippine Startup Week. So it's bigger than ever. And what the week does is that it highlights the success of our startups in raising more money, gaining more revenues, and employing more people. Just 2 days ago, on Monday, Plantina, which is a buy now, pay later platform led by Ideaspace founder Earl Valencia, announced that it raised $2.2 million to expand its operations. As Yusek Fita said, Kumu, a lifestyle and social entertainment platform, has raised a total of about $75 to $100 million, which is really impressive. The Philippines has seen more than 12 million new digital consumers since the start of the pandemic. 63% are from non-metro areas, and 99% say they intend to continue using the services in the future. The most popular digital products include digital payments, remittances, insurance, and lending. Because so many of them are tech-enabled, startups can help lead the country's recovery from COVID. There's more focus today on digitization in terms of how we shop, how we consume entertainment, even in terms of how we date. We need to help MSMEs transition to new ways of doing business. And there's a platform supported by the UN and PDRF. It's called sikap.com.ph. It helps MSMEs get loans and do there's online mentoring available, and all of this is free. So I'd urge everybody to try it out, sikap.com.ph. We see more and more involvement and interest in startups by local governments and by big companies. Just last Friday, Mayor Beng Climaco joined our Zamboanga Kulitan and stayed throughout the program. So that was just the start of our round of several cities that we're going to. Through the Startup Pinay program, Kubo has incubated notable women-led startups, featured 22 Pinay tech heroes, and supported over 100 women founders. In the recently concluded incubation, the takeoff, 46% of the participating teams were led by women. Thanks to a partnership with Youth Business International, we have launched the Community Advocate Program, working with 10 startup enablers from across the country in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao to support their own ecosystem projects. We are also working with DICT to conduct ecosystem mapping in cities in Bataan, Samar, Albay, Camarines Sur, Palawan, and Zamboanga. We also currently support startup development through incubation and acceleration programs such as the UNICEF ING FinTech for Impact program, the incubation, leveling up B2B startups. The PLDT Smart Startup Innovation Challenge as its demo day happening later this week. The Microsoft Acceleration Program is something that we also conduct. And IdeaSpace, of course, its acceleration program is now in its 9th year. We started in 2012, and we've graduated a total of 107 startups. We've also continued to invest in Filipino startups through the IdeaSpace Opportunity Fund, allowing us to support IdeaSpace acceleration alumni such as Agro Digital PH, WorkBean, Humble, One Export, as well as startups new to the community. And let me just thank DOST, DTI, and DICT for their wholehearted support of the startup ecosystem and Philippine Startup Week. I've never seen such strong support from the government for the startup ecosystem. So we're really confident that soon, very soon, we're going to have a lot more successes, and perhaps, as Kat said, even a unicorn or two coming from the Philippines. Lastly, our Kubo and IdeaSpace teams have been working very hard, and so I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. So, and let me thank you all also for being here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Butch. So before I go any further, I just wanted to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Enrico C. Paringit, who is the Executive Director of DOST PSURD, and also Ms. Russell M. Pili, who is also the Chief Science Research Specialist for DOST PSURD. So thank you for joining us for this morning's press conference. Okay, so I've also gotten a note that before we start our Q&A, there's been a request for a few photo ops. So I'd like to bring up to the virtual stage Yusek. The stage. In addition to the four presenters, we have Director Paringit, Kubo Innovation Hub. Just so we can take another quick photo. Again, for our friends from the media, you can rewatch DICT's also in the chat, we'd like to call on Director Emmy as well from DICT. Director Emmy Lu Delfin.
Yeah, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Screenshot. Okay. All right. So I think we can jump into the Q&A. So let us call back to the virtual stage. Yusek Emmanuel Caintic, Yusek Sancho Maborang, Yusek Fita Aldava, and Mr. Butch Mailey. All right. Thank you, everyone. So I'm excited to ask you a couple of questions while we're waiting for questions from our friends in the media. So let's go to Yusek Fida first. You've shared a lot of promising plans from the DTI. But one thing that I think people might be curious now is how you plan to create or strengthen collaborations between startups and businesses so that we enable digitalization across the country.
Thank you, Eunice. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you, Sekvita.
Okay. Okay. So we actually, as presented, we have a regional inclusive innovation center, and through this center, we are trying to link together startups with large enterprises, as well as with the micro, small, and medium enterprises, of course. And it's not only with the enterprises, but we also connect them with the other players in the ecosystem, with incubators, with co-working spaces, with government agencies that are implementing or providing support to startups, as well as to further provide measures and programs for the development of a robust startup ecosystem. Probably I'll also would like to mention the Smart Link program that we are implementing, and this also connects not only micro, small, and medium enterprises with startups, but as well as with the large enterprises. And just to mention one example, since we are already in the process also of implementing a program to support the digital transformation of large enterprises, we are actually also connecting them with the startups that can provide digital solutions and address some of the needs that large enterprises would like some partners to help them in terms of addressing or solving these digital problems, which the solutions of which are being offered by startups. At the same time, we of course would like, in the near future, we would like the corporate sector to be providing funds as well to support the startups.
Thank you, Yusek Fita. And now we'd like to go naman to DICT. So, Yusek Sancho, since we've also been working on the Digital Philippines project, actually before becoming Yusek, we wanted to ask naman how DICT can be supported by the public and the private sector, especially with projects such as the ecosystem mapping and your free Wi-Fi program.
Good morning,
Yusek
everyone.
Mani pala. Sorry, that's for Yusek Mani.
Good morning, everyone. For the private sector and initiatives for the ecosystem mapping, we're working closely with all these startup innovator mentors to allow for them to help out these startups in especially the ones who will win our contest today. I would like to highlight specifically that our focus especially is to select winners with public service bent, meaning to say their solutions will actually be useful for not only private sector or the individuals, but also to help our government offices uh, perform better and become better uh, government offices. As for the free Wi-Fi program, right now we are doubling our efforts, tripling our efforts on expanding our scope and our coverage. We are actually launching our digital infrastructure program, which will solidify and unify our national broadband with that of the free Wi-Fi initiatives. The focus here is that with connectivity, hopefully, our ICT-driven startups will actually be able to make use of better internet so that they can actually thrive in the digital space. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Talagang kailangan natin ng improved connectivity based on the projects you've shared and also what we've heard so far from Yusek Tita. Yusek Manny, mukhang kailangan na ito bilang may AI research na rin si DTI. So let's now go over naman to Yusek Sancho. We do have a question.
Eunice, for the question. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Well, I can say that having helped in establishing around 40 TBIs in different regions of the Philippines, the DOST now is looking and now working towards enabling a more reinforced startup ecosystem, especially in the areas I can say outside of Metro Manila and the other key cities. Results of the first two call cycles of the DOST shared for its startup grant fund program shows that majority of the startups approved came from Luzon, with only 7 coming from the Visayas and Mindanao areas. It was clear that there is a need to strengthen the startup ecosystem in the regions so that the regional startup ecosystem rankings would have been or would have better performed, and to allow more startups from these areas to receive funding from both investors and the government alike. The DOST sees that these TBIs as the champions in bringing together all the different stakeholders in the respective regions and jointly implements programs and activities aimed at boosting the startup ecosystem. As I shared earlier, this is exactly what the HERIT and RECEIVE programs aims to accomplish also. And to this program, to be shared funded TBIs are expected to lead in establishing and formalizing startup ecosystem consortium in their respective regions, which now will allow us to have more private partners in the countryside. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, first question. What makes this year's Philippine Startup Week different?
Well, thanks, Eunice. For one thing, it's been much bigger than the previous years, and it really shows good signs for the future of the startup ecosystem, because we've never seen so many signups and we've never seen so many events hosted by different parts of the ecosystem. And all the leading startups have taken part. And we even have a number of foreign countries and foreign venture funds that are participating. So the fact that we were able to do this during the pandemic is a real tribute to the government bodies and to the organizers, because I wouldn't have been able to foresee that we'd be able to do this in the middle of COVID-19. But the virtual nature of Startup Week hasn't stopped us from making it happen. And I hope that as the years come, this just gets bigger and bigger for the country. And maybe next year we can do it at the beach instead of virtually. Thanks.
Yes, hopefully we can do an in-person Philippine Startup Week for 2022. Okay, so while we're checking for questions for our friends from the media, maybe another quick question lang din for everyone. What's the outlook for the Philippine startup ecosystem for 2022? Butch, maybe we can start with you and then we can go down the line with the undersecretaries.
Well, the forecast from that report by Google, Bain and Company, and Temasek of Singapore, forecast is really good. No, I think, as Kat mentioned, it's like the internet economy is going to grow to $40 billion by 2025, and it's really going to take a much bigger part of the economy from here on in. No? So I think this trend is going to continue. People have gotten used to really living virtually and doing things virtually. I don't think there's in that same survey, over 90% said they're planning to continue living their life this way and doing business this way. So I think we can take advantage of it, because this way we can access a whole global market through the platforms that we have here. That's one good thing about an online platform. So I'm pretty optimistic and pretty hopeful. And the government support and funding has been unbelievable through the new law, Philippine Startup Act, and a number of other initiatives. We had the DOST funded the program for upgrading the TBIs around the country. That's a big success. And they've also funded a number of other startups, as well as the other departments as well. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, and we just need a few more successes. An IPO by a startup, or more fundraising. And I think that will lead to more and more Filipinos getting into this space.
Yeah. Well, let's go naman to Yusek Fita Aldaba. So same question. What's your outlook for the startup ecosystem for 2022?
I'm also very optimistic, Eunice. I think we would, based on what we're seeing right now, there would be more startups that would be able to raise funds. We would be able to create more strong startups with improved quality, with a higher probability of surviving the valley of death, especially now since there are 3 agencies working closely together in terms of providing all the necessary support at all stages in the life cycle of a startup. And actually, we have another one, which is the National Development Company that is going to implement our Startup Venture Fund. And as we have seen as well, Manila is able to raise more number of big seed rounds. The ones that Kat and I and Butch, I think, also mentioned those notable startups that have really been brightening up our ecosystem. And at the same time as well, if we look at the forecasts for the economic recovery of the country, many are saying that by the end of this quarter, the end of this year, the fourth quarter, or towards the first quarter of 2022, we will already be hitting our 2019 level. And I think really there is a lot of momentum, there is a lot of excitement, especially as companies, the private sector and industries are all preparing for digital transformation. And with all of us working together, I think we would really be able to achieve all this really bright forecasts for the startups.
Okay. Same question for Yusek Manny.
Um, well, the silver lining of this pandemic is that the Filipino people are now much more comfortable doing their transactions online, and that's why our e-commerce has really grown substantially. And I would like to second what Yusek Pita said. I think we in government are now in full support or have been doubling our efforts in full support of creating an environment wherein these startups can have easier access to capital, uh, matched to the right market, as both from a supply and a demand perspective. And then what we need to see now is that we ought to determine which startups are really sound business models, because what we do not want is that, and as fast as they start up, it's also as fast as they shut down. So we want to be able to ensure that these startups will have the right business acumen and the right formula to begin with, so that they can actually move towards profitability and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Yusek Sancho.
Thank you, Ms. Eunice, for that question. Well, I agree with all that was mentioned about the very positive outlook for the Philippine startup ecosystem for next year. At the UST, as we are now rolling out our new programs that we will be launching this year. And as we continue to provide support to startup enablers, we are optimistic that this will result in a positive domino effect and will improve our spot in the global startup ecosystem ranking. We will continuously strengthen our projects or programs on the establishment of the TBIs, our HERIT, and tomorrow I think we will be launching the RECID program. This is again to capacitate the startup ecosystems, probably in the regions and in the countryside. I also think that it is also important to look into the status of the startups in the countrysides and not only focus on the key cities of the country. I think that there are a lot of talents and there are a lot of opportunities that needs to be embraced by our startup innovators located in the countryside. And with this, I think that the UST will continuously enhance its program, will continuously elevate and come up with new strategies so that we can harness all of these talents, all of these investments. So that's, as I said, at the end of the day, we can improve our startup ecosystem. Thank you, Ms. Eunice.
Thank you. Another question, as we head towards recovering from the pandemic. So what role did the Philippine startup community play in the country's pandemic response? Maybe I'll ask Yusek Manny first. Para ano yung naging role ng ICT in the pandemic response? And if you've worked with the startups as well, we'd also love to learn more about that.
Thank you for the question. In fact, we're very thankful to the startup community, especially the ICT and ICT businesses. Many of them reached out to a lot of our LGUs and government agencies and delivering services they need. And we would not have been able to. A lot of talk has just been focused on the tracing, the testing, as well as the vaccination. But there are still a lot of other things that were done in terms of software for mobility, software for supply chain, software for analytics in all the various agencies. No? too many to mention, but many of them would not have been possible had it not been for startups, because the startups have this innate agility that corporations will have difficulty giving to the agencies. And because of these startups, many government agencies, especially the Department of Health, even Department of Agriculture, were able to tap into DSWD, and a lot of other government agencies were able to tap at the agility and flexibility and speed at which these startups were able to deliver solutions for them. And it is in this same spirit that we wish to continue this kind of entrepreneurial zest that they were able to deliver in the next few months as we are getting out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yusek Vita.
Yeah, I think Yusek Mani is right. The startups really have played an important role during the pandemic. And in fact, we're seeing them as key drivers of economic growth and job creation. And of course, as a catalyst for radical or disruptive innovation. But what we've seen is that really they were able to react fast and flexibly to the pandemic. They have provided assistance to the government in terms of providing solutions to social distancing, community health, and community health monitoring, individual monitoring, even in addressing problems and the disruptions with respect to the supply chain and logistics. I mean, they were there providing fully digital solutions, including providing ed tech, health tech, and a lot of innovations in medical goods and services. And hence, really, they have played indeed a very important role. And as we recover and as we enter the post-pandemic future, all the more that startups would really be playing a crucial role, especially in order to enable us to pursue digital transformation, as well as an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable economic recovery and growth.
Yeah. Thank you, Yusek Vita. Yusek Sancho, same question. What role has the startup community played in the country's pandemic response?
Well, I saw that and experienced that they played a very pivotal role in this pandemic. Though I can say that most of our startup companies were really affected by what had happened, really affected by the disruptions in the supply chain, the transportation problem, the lockdowns, the temporary closure of offices. But nevertheless, we have shown that a lot of our startups have been able to I can say, survive, and not only survive, but contribute to this pandemic. I can say that my experience in Region 2, when I was still the regional director of Region 2, especially in the areas of e-commerce, a lot of our startups there have come up with an e-commerce system to sell their products from Region 2 to other regions. And also, some of the startups have been able to provide softwares and programs and systems to monitor and keep track of the positive cases of COVID-19 that was used by the local government units. And I think, Eunice, that these are important and urgent manifestation of how, in a way, robust our startups are in the countryside also. And I think that there are more examples to prove that not only the agility and ingenuity of our Filipino startups, this also clearly shows how technology can increase opportunities and how it benefits our people in adjusting to the new normal, especially now that we are in the digital age. Thank you, Ms. Eunice.
Thank you. It's really heartening to know that everyone involved in the startup ecosystem, especially your agencies, are really working to really build this inclusive and diverse ecosystem. So we now have a question from our friends in the media. This is for Yusek Manny. So based on recent studies released by PIDS in 2019, the Philippines is still a bit far off when it comes to providing free Wi-Fi, since there are still regions and areas in the country that do not have adequate access to the internet or have no access at all. Their question is, where are we now when it comes to improving internet accessibility? And what can the public expect, especially for those who wish to start up businesses or boost their business's capacity?
Thank you for the question. The DICT's plan is a bit different from the past, no? Wherein we simply want to, lay down and put up free Wi-Fi sites already. Our focus in the next few years will be focused on fiberization. And because at the end of the day, when our present programs ngayon, is that when we put up free Wi-Fi sites, we end up paying the 70% of the cost to the internet service provider, wherein it's more of a subscription. And it's not sustainable. So our efforts in the next few months and in years to come is that we will build the infrastructure. That's why I said earlier in our presentation that we create a fiber backbone, so that is where everything else will piggyback. Now, for our startups right now, I think naman there is a sufficient internet in the key metropolis and cities of your areas. And I would suggest that you focus first your efforts if you're gonna go pure digital play, set up shop siguro in a locality near your place wherein there's decent internet. And I think there's sufficient ones. For example, if you're from Bukidnon, you go to Valencia, Malaybalay, there's sufficient internet there. And there's sustainable, there's a reliable internet there. It will take some time talaga. We have a focus. We want to light up as many Wi-Fi internet provisions for the countryside, but that will take time because, again, as I said earlier, I don't want to put it up there. Lalagyan ko lang ng 2 strands of fiber, and that's not sustainable. We want to expand our backbone so that all those Wi-Fi sites will mushroom out na lang afterwards. So again, we build the infrastructure so that we can grow faster, better, and quicker later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yusek Manny. I also wanted to go back lang then to Butch. Butch, maybe we can go back to our previous question on the role the startup community has played during the whole COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, as everybody said, I've seen, since last year, we've seen an old world dying and a new world being born. And the pandemic has really accelerated the digitization of the economy by more than 10 years. If it hadn't happened, we wouldn't be doing things like this. And I just want to highlight just a few startups. Metromart, which enables you to buy groceries online, has really experienced huge growth, especially last year and this year, because people were reluctant to go to groceries and supermarkets, and they started doing it online. Automart is a startup where you can sell your cars online. And really, it takes the headache out of the whole thing because they can just they'll either buy your car or they'll put your car up on their marketplace. So that's been great. And there's also a startup called Suki Plus, which makes loans to sari-sari stores. So, and there's also, like One Export and a number of other, Prosperna, a number of other startups that are helping MSMEs digitize and sell their products both locally and abroad. So it's really been a new landscape, a new world for everybody. It takes some getting used to.
Yes. Thank you, Butch. So yeah, for Music Vita naman, you mentioned that the Startup Venture Fund will be a fund of funds. Are you expecting other local or foreign investors to take part? Maybe give us a preview before the launch on the sea.
Yes, definitely. It's open to all Filipino investors, to VCs, including the foreign companies. But for foreign companies, they, of course, need to register first before they could participate. And we actually would very much welcome foreign funds as well, along with other co-investment partners who would help us in implementing the SVF. So the fund, the 250 million fund, actually that's coming from the own funds of the National Development Company. And that is the amount allocated for this year. And for next year, they're going to support it through another 250 million pesos. So I'm really hopeful that we would be able to really generate a lot of good investments emanating from this SVF, and at the same time be able to demonstrate that this is something really that is worth taking, and that in the future, like what I've said earlier, we would be able to entice as well the participation of corporate sector. But in terms of the corporate sector, it's not only the funds that we're after, but in terms of mentorship, that would really very much welcome. And at the same time, we are also trying to attract Filipinos based abroad to come back and provide support to all these initiatives, but in particular to the SVF.
Okay. We have another question for everyone naman. So, how do we encourage more Filipinos to take interest in Philippine startups or in starting their own startups? Maybe let's start with Butch.
Sure. I think we just need one or two more successes. If one of the startups can go public on the Philippine Stock Exchange, that's going to really excite everybody and make both companies and future founders realize that they don't have to go abroad. They don't have to work for a big company to do well. No, they can start their own company and really create wealth for themselves, their employees through stock options, and for the country. So we just need a few of those things like Kumu or other companies to raise money and, as I said, go public, because that's going to attract a lot of interest. And then young people and older people too are going to start paying attention to the startups and decide, why don't I give my idea a try? And that will just lead to a whole slew of more startups and more. We're at the stage where the BPO industry was a few years ago, and I believe that someday the startup ecosystem is going to be just almost as big as the BPO system.
Thank you, Butch. Yusek Sancho, how can we get more Filipinos interested in this growing in the growing tech startup space?
Thank you, Ma'am Eunice, for your question. Well, I think that Filipinos should start early, and I think that the mindset and the perspective should be stimulated at a very young age, so that we can produce Filipinos that are or that will be interested in becoming startups. I think that accessibility also is important. we do not limit the access of startups only to key cities, as I mentioned. I always will, shall I say, promote that accessibility should be, not only limited to Metro Manila, but to the countryside. And with this, I also believe that the academe plays a vital role in attracting startup and possibly coming up with successful startups. There are several avenues at the UST which this startup spirit can be, shall I say, stimulated. There are invention contests, national invention contests. There are SMT fairs where you can attract talented Filipinos. I noticed this in the regions, staying in Region 2 for 25 years, I think, and being engaged with a lot of young entrepreneurs. I am fortunate that in Region 2 we have two big names, and I think they started up as a startup. This is Mr. Dado Banataw and Mr. David Almelo. Owners of companies. I started their careers in Region 2. And I always pose this as a challenge in our region. Ang sabi ko, if we can produce 1,000 like Dado Banataw and 1,000 like David Almerol, just like what Sir Butch is saying, then I think we can really spur the development of this country. So accessibility is one. Second is we nurture the environment that where we should produce in these startups, as I said, not only limited in Metro Manila, but in the countryside. And to be able to do this, I think that we need the full of government approach. And then let's put up facilities, let's put up support systems, DTI, DICT, and DOST, working together with the other local government units, the private units, the funds and ecosystems that will pump prime our programs that will benefit and later on produce startups. So that's what I think of this mission. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Music Fita.
Yeah. Well, to me, I guess we really need more tech entrepreneurship courses, and these courses need to be embedded in our educational system from basic, secondary, tertiary. I believe that there's really a need for us to change the mindset, the culture, such that parents would no longer tell their children when they cannot find a job in the corporate sector or somewhere else, then telling them, mag-entrepreneur ka na lang. I mean, that's why we need to embrace this entrepreneurship mindset. We should not be afraid to take risks. And in fact, we should celebrate failures. And in our society, diba, if you fail, usually you're frowned upon, or people would think that you're not that good. So people are actually ashamed to tell others whenever they fail. But in fact, we should be celebrating these failures, learn from this failure, and think that for each failure is actually a learning. We should fail fast, learn fast, and improve fast. And I think there should be more startup events, more competitions to make people more aware And by the way, I think I forgot to mention a while ago, there's also going to be a pitching competition during the launch of the Startup Venture Fund this Friday. There are 10 startups competing, and the prize is it's a cash prize. It's huge. I mean, first time for us in government to really be giving away this much, but I hope people would get excited and become really more serious in terms of entering, in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, because government is really there to support startups as well as to build a robust ecosystem. So hopefully we'll be able to carry out all these recommendations, all these changes in the very near future.
All right. Thank you, Yusek Fita. Yusek Manny, how can we get more people into the startup space?
Well, first of all, I think startups have to have the people behind startups should have an innate entrepreneurial spirit, and and that takes years of honing, no? And it has to start early. So when you're young, you have to learn how to take the risks, to take on risks. And I think that's what we need to also improve in our education system. A lot of our kids grow up thinking that they should be employees of large corporations or have a secure job. Very few schools are actually pushing to develop that entrepreneurial spirit early. The second thing that I'd like to highlight is that we should create an environment wherein these entrepreneurs or startup people should have the right mentors, because you can fail, and there's a saying, you fail fast or fail smart, but at the end of the day there are people who have done it before, and it pays to have mentors so that you do not need to unnecessarily fail. There are people who can tell you, point you to the right direction early on. And I think that's what we need to encourage now. And all our efforts in DTI, the ICT, and the OST are geared towards making sure we have a complete environment. There is sufficient access to capital, there is sufficient mentoring, and there's also sufficient access to markets. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yusek Manny, while I have you, meron din pong follow-up question for you. Can you expand a bit on the ICT's fiberization programs? How much funds is the government infusing? Are there certain areas of focus? And would you have a timetable?
There is the National Broadband Program, and we have already started the phase 1 using the NGCP route. But in the next few months, we will expand this further by encouraging companies that are capable of building, expanding the fibers through even to each and every municipality and province. The point of this is to be able to expand quickly to all the provinces and municipalities and barangay level, create a backbone network. In doing so, we are encouraging the local communities to piggyback on those infrastructures that the DICT will build with these integrators, telcos, and the like. So, pansinin nyo, we're not trying to put up Wi-Fi sites right there and then. We will not focus on the endpoints. We will focus first on expanding the reach through the fiber fiber network. Thank you. So we want to go back. Sorry, just to add, we want to lay down fibers where the telcos find it do not find it economically viable and feasible, financially viable and feasible for them. So it's all economics for us. Sa kanila naman, it's all financials. So it is the job of the government to spur the growth in these areas to the countryside. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek Manny. I have a question naman for Yusek Sancho because it's something that we've been discussing during this press conference. So, yeah, the startup community is rapidly growing. However, most of these startups are in the urban centers, and same for those that are availing of government services. However, most of our natural resources are in the provinces, in farms, in mountains, close to our seas. What do you think we can do to accelerate growth in the countryside?
Thank you, Ms. Eunice, for that question. Well, there are a lot of things that we can do in order to accelerate growth and progress in the countryside. I think that first we must be able to improve the budget that is poured in the regions. As you may have noticed, a lot of these big budgets in terms of projects are spent on NCR and the neighboring key regions. But I think that there should be equity. You said that we have a lot of resources. There are a lot of resources in the regions. We must be able to identify facilities, support services that is needed in the regions. There must be a flow of projects that will benefit not only the farmers and the fisher folks, but can value add to the natural resources that the regions has. There should be enough experts in the regions to help and assist in terms of development, our local government units. There must be facilities, including TBIs, as I mentioned, to increase the number of TBIs. And not only that, to increase also the number of regional inclusive innovation centers with the DTI. I think also that we should be able to not only invest heavily on the regions, but in terms of the development process should be supported by all the stakeholders. And this can be done by or through the Regional Development Council's endorsement. This is very important. And I think also that manpower and industries should also be considered. For example, in Region 2, we are producing lots of corn and lots of rice, but this corn and this rice goes out of the region, and we do not have value-adding facilities that will probably create more employment, create better profits for our farmers. So we should look to all of these things. There are so many that we should look into. And I think that, as I said, I always believe in the principles of convergence. I always believe that the private sector should really support the programs and projects of the government. And I think that we take the cue from the private sector and ask them what they need in terms of development in the regions. Thank you, Ms. Eunice.
Sorry, yes. Yusek Fita naman, since you were talking about the Regional Inclusive Innovation Centers earlier, is there anything you want to add to what Yusek Sancho has said?
Well, through the Regional Inclusive Innovation Centers, we're able to connect the startups with large enterprises as well as with MSMEs through the entrepreneurship training programs that are being conducted, as well as mentorships, along with design thinking sessions, and really a lot of multi-stakeholder engagements being carried out in these 8 regional inclusive innovation centers. And hopefully we'll be able to build these RICs all over the country.
Okay. Butch, since Kuba has been working with DICT on the ecosystem mapping for this year, and because you also have the community advocate program, can you tell us a bit about how these two projects help bring startups or help encourage more startups from outside of the urban areas?
Yeah, both of these programs, and actually I also want to mention DOST's support for the TBI incubators around the country. All of these programs help encourage startups in outside the Metro Manila area. So because of these, the ecosystem mapping program, for example, we're holding events like these Kulitans, which we just held in Pampanga with Mayor Climaco last Friday. And there'll be several other events in other places like Puerto Princesa, in Cagayan de Oro, and so on. And the DOST's TBI program, we're working with startup incubators in Iligan, in Batangas City. So really, all of these things, we've noticed that every time we hold an event in areas, there's so much interest, not just from the young people in the area, but from businesses and from the local governments. We had a meeting with in the Ilocos area with the officials over there. It's the first time they'd heard of this program. So they were really so enthusiastic about bringing the program over there. In the old days, when we had a physical hub, Kubo, I mean, we could actually have these events there, no? But these days we do it virtually, but that also makes it easier from people in different provinces to participate in these programs because they can view it on Facebook. So that's been a big help in terms of doing that. But more and more, we're seeing startups from all these different provinces, all these different areas. The ideas for, as Yusek Sanchez said, for agricultural startups, for example, have come most of the time from provincial startups. So we're really encouraged. We just need to continue doing what we're doing through the ecosystem mapping program of DICT and really through different kulitans in different cities. Of commerce, so that the business sector in these different regions, they realize the opportunities for funding these startups and in these startups so they can grow, and they'll realize that these startups have the huge potential for growth more than some of the traditional businesses.
Apologies for that. I think Yusek Manny just had to take on a call. But before anything else, we wanted to call to the virtual stage the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology, Secretary Fortunato de la Peña, Sec Boy. Good afternoon.
Welcome, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, this is the staff of the secretary. He just went somewhere. He'll be back in a minute. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So while we're waiting for Sec Boy and also Yusek Manny, so thank you, Butch, Yusek Rita, and Yusek Sancho for your responses. I think hopefully our media friends from the media and also the folks attending this week's conference find more of these projects that you've mentioned and reach out to the regional offices so that they can actually get the support that they need. So yeah, so we'll just going through a couple more questions from our friends in the media. Yeah. For became successful after participating in Kubo's various programs?
Well, I mean, I guess the most notable one, we've mentioned it a couple of times, is Kumu. I mean, they came through the ecosystem. They started there, and today they probably got the best chance of becoming a Philippine unicorn right now. No, I think they're worth ₱1 billion already, and it's a lifestyle social entertainment app that appeals to OFWs all around the world. They've done really well there. And they also offer an opportunity for housewives or for other people to make money by having their own programs on the app, on the platform. It's also, well, Chatbot is the story I like to tell, started by Ron Baichong. He came from a non-traditional background, a poor background, and it was his second startup, and it really went very well. It was bought, he sold it to Sterling Corporation, Sterling Products. And with the money he made, he was able to buy his mother a house. So it shows the opportunities that are available in the startup ecosystem. But there are many others, who went through the ecosystem, who were trained there and are now well on their way to doing well.
Okay. Thank you, Butch. Yusek Fita, we actually heard yesterday from the presentation from Gobi Core that when it comes to the Philippine startup ecosystem, the ratio of men to women is now like at 1 to 2. So we're seeing more women participate in the startup ecosystem. How is DTI supporting the participation of Filipinas, and how are you encouraging more women and young girls to take part in the startup space? Sorry, Yusek Fita, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. We also support Startup Piday. And in fact, in the last couple of years, I think we were able to support really quite a number of Filipina founders by bringing them in missions, international missions, to expose them to markets abroad, as well as link them with other foreign startups. And at the same time, of course, we have other programs, and really, while they're for everyone, meaning whether male or female, but at the same time, of course, we encourage especially the females to participate in these programs that DTI has been offering. And in fact, there is a report saying that for the e-commerce, for entrepreneurs using e-commerce platforms, a lot of them, I think more than 50%, really belong to female founders, and hence, really, there's a lot of scope, a lot of opportunities for us to really be able to participate in a much better way, as well as given that we have all these digital technologies. I think even those females who are not really employed in formal jobs, but can actually become entrepreneurs even while working from home.
Yes. Thank you, Yusek Fita. Actually, I think we'll have to let you go since you have another engagement. So thank you for joining us for the press conference today. Thank you, Yusek Fita. And then also we'll see you later this week for the DTI Slingshot Conference, and
Thursday.
also for Startup Pinay on Friday.
Yes.
So thank you, Yusek Fita.
Thank you so much.
And then also, yeah, so I think that covers most of our questions for this afternoon. Again, please rewatch DICT's Innovation, which recently just wrapped up. You can still rewatch it on Accel Events. And then also tomorrow is a TBI Summit for DOST from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Don't forget to catch that as well. And then DTI's Slingshot Conference is on Thursday. And the Startup Pinay Conference is on Friday. We'd like to thank everyone who attended this press conference. And then also we'd like to ask if Secretary Boy de la Peña from DOST has a few words for our friends from the media. Sec Boy, are you still here? Okay.
Hi, sorry, yeah, this is his staff. Sorry, he's not yet here. My apologies. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess we'll give Sec Boy a few minutes, but we'd like to ask we'd like to call back Ms. Katrina Rausa Chan from Kubo Innovation Hub and Idea Space to maybe help us wrap this press conference up.
Hi, everyone. Hello again. So I thought that was a fantastic conference. I hope our friends from the media got some great insights from our blockbuster panel today. And yeah, I hope all of you share my excitement to see the continued development and implementation of the programs by the DICT, DOST, and DTI. So I think we can all see that, yeah, startups are covered, no, from mentors to matching, from idea to IPO, from Apari to Zamboanga. No, there's plenty of challenges ahead, definitely lots of work to be done. But I hope this whole startup week, this particular press conference, shows all of you that there's a lot of momentum, not only to survive but thrive, based on this year's theme of Beyond Recovery. And yeah, so, for those of you that have been following us from the start, a lot of these ideas that we've fleshed out today were actually first unveiled in the very, very first startup week, during this very same media conference, announcing the Innovative Startup Act, IRR, back in 2019. But for Philippine Startup Week 2021, we are looking ahead. So not just to a world beyond the pandemic, but to a world where technology, capital, education, and collaboration can make a better Philippines possible. So a world where startups are the engine for growth for the country's fast-growing digital economy, and a world where opportunity can be sown, cultivated, and distributed to everyone, regardless of age, educational status, gender, or background. So the world that we envision, with the help of our startups, is a world where Filipinos no longer have to leave home or leave the country to build a happy, healthy, and prosperous life. And we can build the solutions here. So as we look ahead, I'd like everyone to remember that there is no better time to invest in the local startup ecosystem than now. The country has a growing number of incubator, accelerator, investor networks, and programs, and we need the support of both the public and private sector to make our goal of building an inclusive, sustainable ecosystem possible. So we look forward to your support, media friends, to making this happen. Again, don't forget to check out the Startup Week Opening Summit, Innovation by DICT, TBI Summit by DOST, Slingshot from DTI, and the Startup Pinay Main Summit from Kubo, as well as numerous community events by our startup community and the various stages we have on our platform. So I don't know if you can imagine this, but we're able to put together over 100 activities from various organizers in just 1 week, and it's really, really exciting. So once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us for this afternoon's press conference. And yes, please do enjoy the rest of Philippine Startup Week 2021. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Kat. That wraps up this year's press conference. Again, this has been your host, Eunice Braga from Kubo Innovation Hub and Idea Space Foundation. Don't forget to catch the rest of the main summits and community events for this year's Philippine Startup Week. Thank you for attending this press conference, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.